Warning, the following is a cynical retrospective of a cherished gaming institution. Fanboys with heart conditions should not engage with this video.
The very mention of Squaresoft's 7th Fantasy is enough to send a large portion of the world's population into a series of joyous, frothy, multiple nerdgasms. While it's obviously better than Final Fantasy II, is it really that good? Why do fans want a remake so bad? Can it still stand even after the seemingly endless milking of its proverbial teats and the largely pointless form of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII? Well, that's what we're here to see. While originally in development for the Super Nintendo, the game moved to the N64 before eventually settling on the PlayStation. This created a massive rift between Square and Nintendo that until recently wasn't healed. This wasn't anything new. Many Nintendo-based third-party RPG franchises would also make the system jump to the grey block. Ironic considering the origins of the PlayStation as a Super Nintendo add-on. Firstly, we have to look at the context involved. Going back to a simpler time, before Square had bought Lara Croft, before they had allied with their 16-bit rivals, and before the world had been asked to exhibit the moves by a certain captain of the Falcons, Final Fantasy VII was released. It was something that many had been waiting for. With few Final Fantasy titles actually released outside of Japan, it was the first Final Fantasy for many young gamers. It was also the first Final Fantasy to find an official release in Europe, cementing the whole series to the exceptionally popular PlayStation brand, and also the first in the series to be properly 3D. Also, being released as the 7th game, instead of the 4th or 1st, allowed Square to rectify over the fresh-faced 32-bit generation that pesky numbering system they'd introduced after failing to supply the rest of the markets with their proper sequels. The number 4 once again belonged to Cecil and his allies, and 3 was returned to the Onion Knights, eventually. You can still find people that insist Final Fantasy IV is 2 though. Oddly enough, I guess they've never been to a game shop in the past 10 years. Not wanting to reveal too much about the more intricate workings of the narrative, I'll generalise. The story goes that there's this guy who's unfiltered awesome. His name's Sephiroth, and as we don't want to know any of the silly stuff about Genesis in his newest album, that's how I'll treat it here. He's a legendary member of Soldier, a private army employed by the Shinra, an electric company that went ahead and passed go without going directly to jail, striking lucky on a chance and discovering they could drain the life out of the planet for profit. Obviously attending the same school as George Bush, the corporation have been doing this for a while. They literally run the world, so there's no point in arguing with them. Luckily, Pointless is right up the main character's alley, which encourages the terrorist group, Avalanche, which is in full caps for emphasis, to spring into action. Sephiroth, however, is not the outwardly pampered young lady he appears to be. He turns out to be the worst possible thing, a mama's boy with a misanthropic agenda for vengeance, and to attain the power he believes is his. It has come to light that he was created by a man named Hojo using the cells from an ancient alien named Genova, and for whatever reason he's taken it out on everyone else. He wishes to return control to his mother and himself in the process because that's how shit should have been if it wasn't for the selfishness of humans. Treating his precious mother's severed remains like a personal weapon, he embarks on his quest. Avalanche gets swept up in this because Cloud and Seth have a history that really needs seeing to, with the clash of their hideously oversized weapons. Into this we enter the world of Final Fantasy VII, God's game. Our sword arms flabby from playing far too much Super Mario 64. Whether you're happy about it or not, this game brought a series of characters that will resonate through the series, and often overshadow many of the more interesting characters appearing in later titles. Cloud Strife was a brooding protagonist who oozed angst and misguided lies about his past, while begging passing fangirls for a slash-fiction pairing. Joining him were his motley crew of merry men and women, consisting of characters more overused in erotic fan art and iffy fanfiction than choice spectacles are on a Salamence. Barrett Wallace is the first major playable character you'll encounter after you begin. He's mean, he's aggressive, and he ain't getting no plane! Yeah, another Japanese company succeeds in providing us with an overgrown black stereotype to throw around. Also, he says fuck a lot, and can be lured into an ironic dating sequence later on, if you can shift your focus from one of the girls. Barrett is an excellent range character with some powerful limit breaks. He takes a lot of punishment, and oh yeah, he has a gun on his arm. That's right, a gun on his arm. For all his rage though, his priority is to take care of his adoptive daughter Marlene. The major players in Cloud's triangle of love are the notably brunette ladies that tend to stick to this kind of Aryan lead male. Tifa Lockheart is the spunky and top-heavy barmaid of your base of operations. She's a face from Cloud's past as he'd stalked her as a child. Destined to stop the shilly-shallying and become Cloud's girlfriend due to the obvious advantage of still having a heartbeat, combined with Cloud's mantra of bros before hoes, preventing him from taking his deceased best friend's girlfriend's flowers when he had the chance. While we're on flowers, Aerith Gainsborough, or Aeris if you're that way inclined, fills the classic white mage archetype with her limit breaks and becomes the giggly schoolgirl with expert mystical knowledge to Tifa's regime of fists, kicks, and putting Cloud in his place. She expertly uses a metal staff despite her life story not really collating with any combat experience, and famously dies halfway through inspiring many internet fads and catch peekaboo style missions in order to restore her for further use, and giving Sephiroth the mantle of most evil for all eternity. Nobody cares about Galuf, evidently. Red 13 is the next character that you'll encounter. In fact, if Hojo had his way, Aerith would have had an entirely personal encounter with him and possibly a post-coital cigarette. This is how we meet Red 13, or Nanarchy as he prefers to be called. Not that this matters, as the rest of the party dismiss him entirely and continue to refer to him as whatever shit you decided to call him. He has the last laugh though, as he possesses a massively extended lifespan and an inexplicably British accent. This canine's got some serious daddy issues, uses hairpins to attack, and is a pretty decent chap really, next to all the other activists and psychotics. Joining him in a somewhat bestial role is Reeve Twesty, an employee of the Shinra legitimately torn by his terrorist actions and his duty to a company he no longer believes in. He joins the party in the guise of a robotic animal and semi-recurring Final Fantasy character Kashi. I know what you're thinking, it's just a cat with a megaphone and adorable red boots on an obese Moogle with generous sprinklings of Setsu's abilities and an annoying habit of dancing inappropriately on the spot. Well, he is, but he's also strangely awesome. Sid Highwind rounds off the storyline awarded cast. He's yet another Highwind tag lance wielder from the franchise, but this one is the most foul-mouthed yet. He's pissed off that he could never become a spaceman and touch the moon, despite the fact we've done it here on Earth, but have yet to cast a single ice spell through a magical bauble. If only we could trade places for a day. I suppose everyone wants what they can't have, don't they? He's the guy to speak to about airships because his parents named him Sid, and those are the rules. Also, like in 10, he has a completely out-of-place accent in the Advent Children, and he looks oddly like Eminem from certain angles. The game also has two secret characters, mirroring the completely optional Umaro and Gogo from Final Fantasy VI. Well, okay, you're probably best to opt out of Umaro completely, but I digress. They can be obtained pretty much whenever you want, but Yuffie is encountered first. She's a ninja girl from an island that's been at war with the Shinra. She chooses to wield an oversized shuriken in battle and sing along to songs from Greece. She's a precocious little bastard, who has this silly little punching animation to show how tough she is in pantomime. She's also known for triggering one of the game's most boring side quests, which is only rescued by the presence of the Turks, and getting travel sickness because she's never seen an airship before due to a crushing case of xenophobia. Vincent is probably the last character you'll obtain. His gimmick is transformation and the ability to attack from the back row. He's the Al Simmons of the J-pop generation with a fixation for firearms and a cape to rival Kennedy's. Vincent is not only the brooding emo to outdo all brooding emos, but also usually the co-star of the previously mentioned Cloud slash fiction, courtesy of those lovely fangirls. Love you girls! Appreciate your imperviousness regarding canon! Taken to living in coffins and writing poetry about his ex-girlfriend, used to be a Turk but was fired because he didn't have a mobile phone. He's died before, so he's hardcore. The game's typical of the series, only this time it's in somewhat 3D. Most areas are composed of pre-rendered images, with your characters overlaid as a 3D model. The world map is one large 3D model with various terrains textured onto it. Miniaturized towns and landmarks rise out of the ground in places, awaiting your intersection to enter, similar to how they appeared in the older Final Fantasy titles, though you won't be seeing the world map for a few hours because the game thinks it's funny to restrict you to the rather bland slums of Midgar and its uniformed reactors for the first few slow hours. Battles are similar to the ones that appeared previously too, annoyingly random and intrusive, usually back-attacking you with critical hits and bad breath when you're crawling on your last legs out of a dungeon. Getting into the battle, this game retains the ATB gauge from 4, 5 and 6 that allows turns to come up independently based on a number of factors. Added to this is a gauge that monitors your limit status. Filling it brings up your character's turn and allows them to perform a powerful action that is exclusive to the character. In this state, the attack action is replaced with the ability to summon these limit breaks. These are similar to the desperation attacks seen in Final Fantasy VI. You could choose when to fire them off by selecting another action so that it wasn't automatically used like the trance gauge in 9, or completely random when low on health like 6. In the departure from the norm, the battle line was reduced from 4 to 3, meaning that it would be even tougher to select a party, especially considering that Cloud was forced on you, essentially reducing your choice to 2. This limitation will be repeated throughout later entries in the series. 7 did bring an interesting skill learning system named the Materia System, taking its cues from the Esper equipping found in the previous game, though this time it incorporates more than just learning magic skills. Every skill that isn't attack, item or guard find their way into a chunk of materia. If you want to steal, equip it. If you want to cast cure, equip that. The only restrictions are whether you have the materia in question, and that you have a materia slot in your weapon or armor free. Some materia add statistical bonuses, some raise stats by percentile while dropping another. It's all about balance. Once unequipped, the skills were lost, but it did mean you could pass the skills around your party freely at any time while not engaged in battle. Summons make a return, and this is the first game in the series when they were totally OTT. With animations lasting a fair amount of time, these things blast through typically the whole enemy party, but can only be summoned for the amount of levels you have on their materia during any given battle, presumably for balance. So initially you can call a summon once. 7 also adds way too many variants of Bahamut. It's like open season for the Worm King.